about money
Welcome to another
today.
episode of Practice Prosperity. We are joined today by Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell. She's an estate attorney, but she kind of focuses on business owners, which is directly relevant to my market and the people that we talk to on this channel. So it's going to be a fun conversation. We're going to go down these details, even as far as operating agreements, something that a lot of business owners kind of neglect, but we're going to kind of highlight why that's so important. So first of all, thank you for joining us, Lynita.
Thank you so much for having me, Randall. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. So let's get into it. So, if you don't mind, introduce yourself, your firm, and the type of clients you'd like to serve.
Absolutely. So I am Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell. I am an attorney as well as a CPA, and I love helping people to secure their legacies. And that is not just the financial legacy, but that is a big piece of it, but also the things that will help your family to understand your wishes, the reason why you got started, and have some incentive to continue on in the beautiful path that you have laid. I practice in Georgia and Alabama. However, if you have general questions, I am always available to help and introduce people in my extended network across the country because I am really passionate about helping people, business owners, entrepreneurs, and those people who are rising and dualpreneurs to establish their businesses as well as their estate plan.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, let's go into it. So, a lot of people think just because I save up a large pile of money and my people, my beneficiaries are going to receive a large sum of money, that's good enough. Where is that missing? Because you see people receive money, what happens. You see where things may have been neglected financially because to build up that pile of money. Like, what do people miss when they only think of building up a large nest egg?
Yes, and so first I will say kudos to those people who have had the foresight, the industrial drive to do so, because leaving your family with a beautiful golden nest egg is an absolutely admirable sentiment. But then there is the part of protecting that golden egg, right? So we have to have documents in place because if and when, because none of us came to stay, we transition or we are in the unfortunate position where we are not able to take care of ourselves, not able to make decisions for ourselves. We want to have paperwork in order. That means that it's printed out, it is signed and notarized, copies given to the appropriate parties, your agents, so that they know how to move when you are no longer in a position to tell them how to move. A lot of times we, Randall, assume that our families just know our wishes. But even if they quote know our wishes, are they necessarily in a position to act on them? If you told your children, are they adults? I'm not just talking about the legal age 18. I'm talking about out on their own, managing their own affairs in a way so that they're not calling you every month or two saying, hey, can I get a loan? Are they able to execute on what you have built? Do they understand all of the ins and outs of your business, your industry? If you have a partner, how that partnership is allocated, where it's 50-50 or you 90 and 10. Do they understand that if you own a home, that you own it outright, or if you are married and y'all purchase the house together, is it joint tenancy or is it tenancy in common? If you have bank accounts, do they know where they are? Are they paid on death beneficiary? Have you listed the person as a signatory? Do they even know where to go? These are things that it's not until we're sitting down talking about them, Randall, that we realize that it's much more than just leaving a pile of money. And so it's important that we sit down and we have these conversations with not just our attorney, but also our financial advisors like yourself, so that it's not just sitting in one pile, but it's working for us as well.
What do you say to somebody? I'm kind of nervous about sharing what I have with other people, or even my expectations of my asset. That doesn't feel right. I'm nervous about it. How do you help the people that you serve get over that hump?
Well, first, I honor the fact that that is the way they feel. I think one of the things that people in our professions do is we kind of try to mold past people and their emotions. And that is absolutely not the right thing to do. You can't separate the human from what they're feeling. That's part of the being, the human being. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is actually asking, what is it that you are feeling uncomfortable about? And sit and listen, not from the perspective of trying to respond, but from the perspective of wanting to understand. And then once you understand the objections, then you can lay out a proposed plan, because ultimately the client is going to decide what they want to do, if anything. Because some people, it's not often at this point, but some people, after laying it all out, they still decline to do and do nothing. A good person that most of us know is the entertainer Prince. Prince had financial advisors, he had attorneys, and they absolutely did try to get him to do a will before he passed away, which he refused to do. And it left his family in a quagmire. And going back to your first question about what do you do when there's a pile of money? Prince had plenty of money. He had intellectual property and copyrights and trademarks and patents and cash and no direction as to what should happen to any of those things when he passed away. I speculate that one of the reasons is because he possibly had an heir out there that he felt that he didn't do right by while he was living. But that's purely speculation. And that he was just like, I'm going. Let them fight about it, and I'm out. And some people feel that way, and that is just the way that it is. But we listen so that we understand, then we address those concerns, lay out a plan, and then let the client decide from there.
I, I get to talk to a lot of estate planners, and they say the
Yes.
same thing across the board. Somebody's inclined to get a estate plan, or somebody's not inclined to get a estate plan. Based off your experience, what have you seen worked to get people over the finish line to actually complete their estate plan? Not just talk about it, maybe not just pay fees, but fund the trust, all of the above. What does it take to get the average Joe to that point?
So we begin with the end in mind. And one of the things that I do to ensure that we get over the finish line is we get that information at the beginning. So when a person schedules with me, they immediately receive a link to a questionnaire, the estate planning questionnaire, and it has you list all of those items. And then we talk through all of those things. Then I put a few things for you to think about. And then at the end of that session, which normally runs between 45 minutes to an hour and a half, that's when the client normally says, yes, let's move forward. They pay the retainer, we do the work. As part of the work, we fund the trust. There is no, I'm reminding you to do that later. We're doing that up front before you even agree that we're going to work together. Because for whatever reason, we might not decide that this is a good fit. I've not had that happen, thank God. But if at some point that did happen, you would still be empowered to move forward and get this done eventually, which is the main reason that I do this work. I really am committed to education, empowerment, and execution.
So, a lot of people listen to this show, they're business owners. Uh,
Yes,
and there's some call it operating room. People don't realize an estate plan has to be done for the business as well. So, what are the
yes.
elements of an operating agreement that are important, but also are important when you think about estate planning?
Yeah, so the first thing that's we have to consider is the structure of the business. Is this a sole proprietor? Is it a partnership? Is it an LLC? Is it a corporation? If it's a corporation, is it a C corp or is it an S corp? So that's the first thing. The second thing, you hit it on the head, the operating agreement. Does the operating agreement speak to what happens when one of the owners passes away? If it's a corporation, we have shares of stock, and the shares of stock are going to be distributed according to the will. We hope there's a will. But if not, then that part will have to go through probate, right? But in the other structures, you have normally one or two people who have ownership interests in the property. And the operating agreement does need to speak to what happens if one passes away. Does the other person have first right of refusal to purchase the interest in the business? Or does that interest automatically shift to the other owner or partner? If it's just one person, one of the things that the operating agreement should state is who should be tapped first to be the operator or the administrator of the business. And if not, we have what's called a transfer of secured interest of what can happen with the ownership interest of the business. You also want to have a list of where the business banks. Now, there won't be a paid on death beneficiary on the bank account of a business, but there absolutely will be a list of those people who have authority to get a printout of the bank statement, deposit and withdraw funds. Because remember, this is an ongoing enterprise. So transactions are still happening even when the owner transpires. So we want to identify a responsible person or a group of responsible people who can still continue on with the business and the legacy and the organization's mission, vision, and values. So those are things that we really do need to consider as business owners and even as entrepreneurs who are out here.
I think what's so scary, if something were to happen to me, as
Mm.
most businesses, you have automatic deductions. And unless
Yes.
somebody interferes with that, the business may not be operating, but you're still paying those fees and bills, and you may have a certain amount in an account that you would love to go to your heirs, but that's just being collected by vendors. And there are ways to mitigate that, but you have to do an act to mitigate those things.
Right. And one of those acts is appointing someone to act in the event that you pass away. As attorneys, we are required by the state bar, wherever we're practicing, to appoint someone as the second in command, basically the contact. As a solopreneur, it's a good girlfriend who has a list of everything and who can pick up and run immediately, contacting my clients, contacting the bank, my trust account, everything to ensure exactly what you just said does not happen. I don't believe that is the case with a lot of professions. I know in the accounting arena, that is not something that I've ever been required to do when I renew my license. But I absolutely have to do that every year when I renew my license as an attorney.
One thing that mitigates some of those things, not all, is key man life insurance. So,
Yes.
how have you seen that implemented in practice?
Well, first of all, we have to get it. And so a lot of people don't move to get it, Randall, because they're just like, all this insurance, I already have short term and long term and life. Well, just add one more. Key man, we'll do an umbrella policy. Your insurance company will make it affordable for you and they will go and get that taken care of. So that's the first thing is you actually have to purchase it and pay the premiums on it. The second thing is whoever that person that you're insuring, normally it's us, but there might be somebody else within the business that you are insuring, you let them know and let their family know as well. The third is that you want to designate someone to shadow that key person. So should they pass away, that next person has the skills and the information needed to continue on. Now, will they necessarily do as good a job as that key man? Probably not initially, but they will have a firm foundation. They will have been trained by the best, and the business will have an opportunity to continue. And these are the things that we do to ensure the legacy and the firm foundation that we have established within our business.
I think that triggers or makes me think something like succession plan. Um,
Yes.
I think that is so important. As entrepreneurs, we want our hands on everything. We want everything to have our quote unquote touch. But as you age and as you want your business to mature, you have to back off, let people make mistakes, grow and develop. Like, speak on some of those things that you have seen.
Yes. So, like you said, part of succession planning is mentorship. And mentorship is not just the training, it's being available, it's listening and giving advice when asked. It's the lunches, but also the times where we're just going out for some fun. It's the business development, but also the personal development as well. And it's not just one person that the owner has this type of relationship with. They want at least three people within the organization that they are cultivating these relationships because life happens. What if one person decides that they just don't want to do any of this anymore and they want to move away to Tahiti or Tibet and become a monk? What if one day they decide that they no longer want to be a financial planner and they want to pursue their dream in Hollywood producing movies? You want to ensure that you haven't placed all your eggs in one basket when it comes to your business. You've worked hard, and that mentorship is not just for one person, it's for the people that you have identified as having the mental, emotional, financial intelligence in order to execute well the things that you have established.
I had a mentor in another different business. He was a chiropractor and successful chiropractor business, well known, loved in the community, had a staff. Something happened to him.
Mm,
He's no longer with us, unfortunately. And
mm.
guess what happens? All the equity that he built in his business kind of goes away in a service-based business because you didn't have anybody to designate with that. And your family loses out on the equity that you built. It's just so much, I believe, missed opportunities and goodwill that he built up that just vanishes. And I think that's a sad thing.
I totally agree. And it's another reason that we want mentorship. And to your point, one of the things that could have been done to mitigate that so that maybe all of the equity wasn't gone, but maybe 20 or 30%, reach back into the community where you are. So, for instance, the chiropractic school, his alma mater, bringing in someone young to mentor, develop, and to eventually transition the practice over to that person. I'll never forget when I was in high school, my father was an orthodontist, and he had in his mind that I would be as well. But I was definitive in saying this is not what I want to do.
Right, right, right.
And he was crushed, but he honored what I had to say. Um, but my dad at that moment, he decided that he would simply, when it was time for him to retire, that he would just wind down the business. He owned the building as well as the land, and he sold it for a nice penny. And he was
I think he froze out on me. Hello.
and we have to be prepared for that.
Awesome, awesome. You froze for a second.
Okay.
Go back to I think you mentioned your dad sold the business. Everything after that I missed, unfortunately.
Okay, right. So I was saying that once I was very clear that I was not going to follow in his footsteps, my father decided at that time that when it was time for him to retire, he would just wind down the business and sell the building and the land that was attached to, and which he did, and he made a very nice penny. He could have looked back to his alma mater, Howard University, and brought someone in and trained them and handed off the business. Some of his colleagues have done that, but that's not something that he wanted to do. And you have to respect that. But that was something he decided. And so he was able to make decisions based on that, like funding his retirement, ensuring that his insurance was all up to date. Things that my dad was older, and so he had the foresight to do that. And so I think a lot of us have in our minds that, I'll decide that later, thinking that that will never come, but someday it's going to come for all of us.
You know, people don't think about there's a privilege of getting old in your business.
Mm, yes.
And that is hard to speak about. I also think there's an element of course, as a practitioner, you work with excellence, but a
Yes.
second generation of excellence, I don't think our community really gets to experience as
Mm.
others do. Like this is a 100-year-old business, a 50-year-old business, always started from scratch. I don't think benefits anybody.
I agree it doesn't. But I think since we're talking about our community specifically, we have to remember that we want our children to have the freedom to explore their skills, gifts, and talents. And that a lot of times our parents did not necessarily have the option of what to explore because a lot of opportunities were not open to them. And so they went where they could get a job and that they could provide for their families. And so while it would be great to build upon these businesses that have been around for 50 or 100 years, you also want, because I know that's what I want for my daughter, I want her to have the option to do the things that she will be excellent in, that she will wake up every day and be passionate about, just like I'm passionate about what I do with estate planning.
Good. So one of the things I think you mentioned, your dad was in business. He opted to sell his business.
Mhm.
Well, when people sell their business, they have to do a valuation.
Yes.
Speak on the importance of businesses doing valuation as part of preparing their estate.
Absolutely. I actually believe that a business should have a evaluation done every 5 to 7 years. I think that it really gives you a good idea of the growth and be able to celebrate those monumental leaps and also identify areas in which you can make some changes, possibly to your strategy and maybe even to the overall vision where you're going with your business. When it comes specifically to the estate, you want your heirs to have an opportunity to have a firm number. So when people call, because they're going to call, and if you don't believe me, if you have a cell phone, everybody has a cell phone, you've received those calls. We're in your area and we want to buy your house. You know, um, when your heirs are grieving you, you don't want them to be in a position, excuse me, where they are vulnerable and susceptible to just any type of number that comes their way. If they have something in what my mom would say, the black and the white, they have a firm number in hand, they know where to move from there. So any offers that come in ridiculously low, they know to just discard those. Those people aren't serious. And any offers that come in close, now we have something to talk about.
That's important.
Mhm.
Just, I think one element that you touched on is when they do the valuations, they also show you the opportunities of your business. What
Yes.
levers to pull to grow if you want to grow? What levers to pull to maybe even reduce expenses so that is more value? So it's definitely more than just a number, but like you said, that number to your family members. I think a lot of times, we get rid of stuff in our loved ones' home when they pass, and
Mhm.
we don't know how valuable it is. Sometimes we just want to get through it so we can begin the grieving process.
I totally agree, Randall. One of the things that continually surprises me when I am working with clients, the number of people who say, well, I don't have much. And then when we're done, they're like, wow, I had more than what I thought. I tell people if you move down here from Chicago or Detroit, I know you have a fur collection because that hawk does not play. So I know that most people have china, particularly if been married a while. They have the china from when they got married. That is of value. Your heirs want that. Many of my clients they have jewelry, um, many tennis bracelets. That's a collection. Beautiful art for my sneakerheads. You own 20 and 30 designer pair of shoes that have not one crease in it. That is a collection. And so when we're done listing those things, you have much more than you thought. And the people you love and who loved you, they knew and know how much that meant to you. And you would be surprised a lot of times they keep those things. Even if they can't wear it or fit it or have to find some place within their own living quarters to make it work. They want those memories of you.
Yeah, we're recording this in mid-December, and the fur coat sounds pretty nice right now.
Yes, it does. And I'm in
So,
Georgia saying that.
so you're a second generation business owner.
Actually, I am a fourth generation business owner. Yeah.
Speak to me on that exposure, because I think it's hard to see yourself as an entrepreneur unless sometimes you see other people becoming entrepreneurs. So what does that do when somebody grows up in a family where entrepreneurship is almost normalized?
Well, the first thing is you really realize your blessings. I recently completed my genealogy report for both sides of my family. And for both sides of my family, we found out that my great great grandfathers had their own businesses. And to know that a lot of the advice that has been passed down, that came through every good as well as every challenging time within the past 100+ years, it really makes me realize that number one, I'm not alone. And number two, that planning and family are everything. Because whenever they made a step, it was always with not just their children, but their grandchildren in mind. Now, were they able to hold everything? No. The depression touched my family just as it touched other people. The Great Recession touched my family just as it did other people. But the one thing that it could not rob us of, and all of you listening to this have this, is your memory and your work ethic. You remember what your parents taught you. You remember the lessons that you learn as you're in this business. And as you share that information with those that you love, your children, your grandchildren, nieces, nephews, people who work for you who are willing to listen, your legacy lives on. And it transcends all of the stuff, the building, the tools, even the services. Your name will be spoken with respect. And at the end of the day, that's really what we're aiming for. When you started this, you were talking about that huge pile of money. That huge pile of money is our way of ensuring that our children have something, but also that they respect, love, and admire the person who left it for them.
Yeah, yeah, and that's the respect is work. The respect
Yes,
costs money. The respect
yes.
is laborious, and I think yes, the angle towards respect, I like that. So yes, you had generations of business owners, but why
Yeah.
did you? What was your decision to say, I think I'm gonna give it a shot?
So I started off in corporate America. I began my career as an accountant. Started first with what was then Coopers and Lybrand, is now PricewaterhouseCoopers or PwC, and then transitioned over to Deloitte. I didn't like accounting, went back to law school, worked in various organizations, and was like, I like real estate, which is where I started, but I would really like to do some things on my own. And I suspect that many people listening to this can relate. You like the people that you work with, you like the people you work for, and you like the work that you do. But there's something inside of you that says that I want to do it a different way, and I want to do it from a place of service. And when we're part of somebody else's organization, what we want is of very little concern to the people who hand us a paycheck every 2 weeks or so. And so we have to do it their way, in their time, and in a manner that they are pleased with. When I stepped out on my own, I had very clear ideas about how I wanted to run my firm, the way I wanted to treat my people, and I have been able to largely execute on that vision. And so for many of us, the idea of being able to do the things that we have been called to do in a way that makes us smile every day is the way and the reason that we step out on our own. And it's how we stay out here because it is not for the faint at heart. That is for sure.
No, I 100% agree. I see it as a bird running and flying. We want to fly with our wings fully extended. Sometimes when you work for an employer, you say, "Can I turn left? Can I turn right?" When we can just flow um, as we see fit.
That's
What did
right.
what did you get from working from a CPA firm that you may be applying into your business now? Like, was it some life lessons, some principles, some work ethic? What was that you're applying now?
I look back to my accounting career for every pivotal point in my life. The first time I took the bar exam, I did not pass. And I look back on my study habits for my accounting degree and excuse me, my accounting license, my CPA license, and I executed the exact same way, and then I passed. When I walked out the door, I knew I had passed, kind of a feeling. When I decided that I was going to focus full steam ahead in estate planning, of course, I was going to be looking back to my accounting days because there are tax and accounting implications in almost everything we do. For instance, when you were asking me about funding the trust, well, one of the main assets that we transfer into a trust is the residential home or the primary home. But in Georgia, the quitclaim deed has to be structured a certain way, or there will be a trigger event for taxes. But those are things that, and it's one of the reasons I tell people, I know that you want to download forms from Google. I know that, a lot of these platforms are like, you pay me $20, or some of them you can get this free. If that's what you can afford right now, then absolutely. I would rather you have something rather than nothing. But just like you want to be paid for your services and your knowledge and expertise, so do we, Randall and I, right? And so these are the things that you're paying us for to ensure that you don't get caught at your beneficiaries, the people you love, do not get caught in a situation that they don't need to be in because you were trying to take a shortcut. So I absolutely rely on my accounting background daily.
I'm curious, how much did you dislike big accounting to go to law school? Like,
You know what?
it has to be
So,
focused.
well, you know what, Randall, I always wanted to be a lawyer,
Mm.
but my mom was adamant that I not major in pre-law. She was like, you might decide you don't want to be a lawyer, and then you can't get a job with a pre-law major. And so I was like, okay. And she said, well, you seem to like business. I was very involved with the Future Business Leaders of America. I loved the advisor, Mrs. Jones. So whatever Mrs. Jones did, I was with her, and she was our FBLA. So FBLA. So I was like, okay, well, I'll be a business administration major. And my mom was like, absolutely not. I know too many business administration majors who don't have jobs. So I was just like, okay, mom, what am I majoring in? She said, accounting. So that's what I did. And when I got to Florida A&M School of Business and Industry, anybody who was an accounting major was working to ensure they had enough hours to sit for the CPA exam, which in Florida at that time was 150 hours. So that's what I did too. Um, and I graduated. I went on and worked with the big firms, and firm life, depending on where you go, can be soul sucking. Uh, and I was young and inexperienced. And when I joined Coopers and Lybrand, it was a month before they merged with Price Waterhouse. And I don't care where you go, mergers are stressful. Everybody is scared they're not going to have a job tomorrow. And that makes people much less inclined to want to help a new person on the block. And so it really tested my soul. But within 6 months, I was able to get my sea legs, show everybody what I had, why I'm so awesome and all that good jazz. But that really that really impressed me. It really impacted the way that I look at the world, how I function, how I treat people, and even how I hire. So yeah.
It's interesting because both Big Four accounting and also attorneys, you know, alcoholism's big in both of those professions because of how stressful they are. One thing is consistent among, I would say, attorneys is what they teach you in school. They teach you how to think. They don't actually necessarily teach you how to practice. And that's even
Yes.
more so with estate planning. They have some estate planning classes in law school, but you have to actually learn how to practically execute certain things. Speak
Correct.
on, you know, learning things from the ground level to learn it to a point where you can provide services to clients.
So I am so ever grateful for the Black Law Student Association at Georgia State University College of Law. One of my good girlfriends at the time, Kim Ayo, she was part of the organization and eventually became president, I believe. And so she got involved with the Georgia Association for Black Women Attorneys, or GABWA. And so I did too. And GABWA has a very strong community service arm throughout the state. And if you're going to be involved with the organization, you're going to do a lot of service. And I rose through the ranks and became president of its foundation. And one of the programs that I'm very proud to say is still in effect almost 20 years next year, is the Civil Pro Bono Project. And within that, because it provided and still provides many services, but one of the primary is estate plans for the indigent. And as part of leading that, I felt I needed to know how to do it. And so I took the training. I had clients that I provided for pro bono, loved the work. Was still working, with other firms and organizations, but I was very passionate about that. Then I got involved with the Atlanta Volunteer Lawyers Foundation doing similar work, and then Black Women Will, founded by Janai Thornton, a CPA here in Atlanta. And that's when I was just like, I want to do this all the time. And so I really embraced that and I ran for it. So as far as establishing foundation, serve your community. Get out and try new things. When you find something that puts a smile on your face that makes your heart sing, really tag in that. Take the continuing education courses related to that. A lot of the nonprofit organizations actually offer free continuing education credits in exchange for you doing some work for free for those who cannot afford it. When I got started in this, that was not in my mind. I did it because that's what my colleagues were doing and I enjoyed the work, and then I was leading it, so I absolutely had to do it. But that is the easiest, most enjoyable way to establish a foundation in something in which you have no experience, but that you really want to do and get good at.
I had a conversation with a client yesterday, and I was telling them that when I was young, I had to do a lot of volunteer stuff. And
Mhm.
I feel like volunteer is a muscle that helps build your entrepreneurial, ability to identify opportunities. I feel like, and a lot
Yes.
of folks, they get a great education, they work a great job, but they depend on the job to provide all of their, I guess, learning opportunities, are applying to a different firm. So speak on how, as a professional, the need to always look outside and go the extra mile outside of the firm to round yourself off as a professional and entrepreneur.
I think it's absolutely essential, especially when we're talking about networking and building relationships that will lead to referrals. I was just talking to a girlfriend the other day about the fact that I've been involved in various organizations, and she asked me, "So what do you do for business? Like, what marketing do you do?" Randall, I had to tell her, I don't do marketing. Like I might post a video on social media from time to time. And by time to time, I mean every 6 months or so regarding my legal business. But for the most part, those referrals come from relationships that I have from people that I have worked with in the volunteer area. And people are much more comfortable referring to you when they have seen you in an environment you don't have to be in. You're not being paid. So the fact that you're showing up in excellence says, if that person is doing great and they're not receiving any compensation, my goodness, what are they going to do when they get paid? And they get an opportunity to actually like you, like as a person. People support and do business with people that they like. And there's very few exceptions. I can only think of one in my entire career. It was this person I worked with. I won't name the organization because the area in which she worked was so niched that somebody would actually know who I was talking about. But she was the only person who knew how to do what she was doing in the state. And only a handful of people like her in the country. So when she made mistakes that cost the organizations thousands of dollars, there was nothing they could do because she was the only one who knew exactly how to fix it and to ensure that the next mistake wouldn't cost them millions. But they didn't like her. She didn't have the personality. They didn't like her. And I was just like, I know that I don't need to be like that. Yes, I want to be great at what I do. I want to be highly specialized and great expertise. But I also want people to like me because I like people too.
Yeah, people don't talk about that likability. They focus
Mhm.
on competency and qualified.
Yes.
And but when you get away from, I don't know, yeah, in real life, do I want to
Real
work
life.
with this person 40 hours a week? Do I want to be around? I
Yes.
don't care if they're excellent. Like life is way more important sometimes than productivity. Um,
Yes.
and I think people miss that. And I also want to touch on volunteer work. Um, when you volunteer with folks, you pre-weed out a lot of things. Um,
Yes.
Counter that is going to a networking event where everybody is there for a transactional situation. What
Yes.
can I get out of what opportunity and who are you? At a volunteer event, you're in regular street clothes. You're dressed down,
Yes.
and that other person also has a heart to serve. So, like you said, you're already cutting through a lot of stuff just by doing those activities.
That's right. That's right.
And that's huge. Now, let you touched on a little bit, but you hang your shingle out. You
Mhm.
have to get business. And you mentioned
Yes.
a lot of it comes to the network, but early on, people still have to watch you a little bit before they send somebody to you. But how did you initially get business?
So, and this is just faith journey. I was working, the last firm I worked with. Um, One of the ladies I worked with was complaining one day during lunch about how she hardly ever saw her fiance anymore because he had taken on this major client and he did not have truly the capacity. And so he was doing work that he would normally delegate to someone else himself. And she paused mid rant and looked at me and said, Lynita, are you looking to do something else? Now, up to that point, I never said anything to her, Randall. I had conversations with my husband, but you don't broadcast at work that you're looking to do something else, right? And I was like, what did you have in mind? And so she was like, here's his number. I want you to talk to him. You're smart. You can help him so I can see him more often, like literally. So I did call him. He did not call me back. I told my mom, and she said, go put on a suit, go and sit in his lobby, and you stay there until he comes out to see you. I was like, okay. I did what my mom told me to do. I walked in, I told his secretary, attorney Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell, he to see. And so they thought that they had missed an appointment. So he comes rushing out. I'm so sorry. Didn't have you on the schedule. And I was like, oh, no, 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 you didn't. I called and you didn't call me back. And then I explained how I got there. And he was so relieved, like he was about to pass out. So we go in the conference room. He lays out everything that he had going. It was a lot. But I started doing work for him part-time, like in the evenings on weekend. Did that for a few months. And then he sat me down and he said, you know, you're really good at this. You could hang out your own shingle and you could do this like full time. I went home and I told my husband, and he was like, do it, do it. He had always worked for what I call very parental organizations where it is so hard to get in the door because they want you to stay forever. Excellent benefits and all the rest of it. And he was just like, let's go. And so that's what I did. And um, I had worked for a recruiting firm. I was a headhunter doing C-suite. So I got on that phone. I cold called all the title companies and large firms. I would call, send an email, call again, send another email until finally I got other business other than this gentleman as well. And it really worked out because Randall, they broke off their engagement not 2 months, 2 months after that. And then he got out of the business not 2 months after that. So the timing was amazing. And I haven't looked back.
Where does that drive to pick up the phone and call somebody come from? Because that's not natural. It's not taught in school. It's sometimes shunned or frowned upon in media.
Hmm. Yeah, so the drive was this has to work. That was all that I knew to do at the time. It was 2006. It was December 2006. So, you know, I knew that I wanted to do something different with my life and that I had worked with enough organizations and was at that point in my second industry to know that it was not going to be different somewhere else. And if I wanted different, then I would have to build it for myself. And so every phone call, every email brought me closer to that.
For me, this sounds insensitive. I know. But unless an entrepreneur is willing to go that far, make those calls, I don't know if they're really that serious. Is that too much to say?
I think it depends on the business um, and that person's network. Let me see. The third firm that I worked for, I remember this gentleman telling the story about how the firm was founded. I always had a question mark as to how much of it was accurate, but this is how the story went. He worked for Big Four accounting. At the time he did this, it was Big Eight. He decided he didn't want to do that anymore, so he came out. And he was talking to a friend who knew somebody who wanted a group of consultants. And he was like, you know, I think you guys would get along very well. They go to lunch, hit it off, and he's just like, I've got this huge contract. Can you do it? And my man said, yes. He had not a business card, had not established his company, of course, had no employees. His working for the business was recruiting the people, but he already had a client. So I don't know if it's necessarily that you're not serious if you won't hit the phone for the client side, but I know that on one side or another, you are going to have to get on the phone and make things happen. That's for real.
One of the challenges thing for most entrepreneurs is pricing. How much
Mm.
to charge? The beauty of it is I can charge whatever I want. But what do I want? What I want the end result? What was your pricing journey starting out?
Yeah, starting out, I talked to other attorneys who did work that I did, and those who were kind and generous enough to share told me. And so I priced accordingly. And then as I developed my own way of doing things, I realized that my work ethic and the quality of my work far exceeded a lot of my competitors, and that I could charge more. And those who initially would say, that's too much, I'm not paying that, I go with God. Like I was not angry because I knew they would be back. They always come back because of something that someone does that to us is absolutely outrageous. But for them, it's like, this is what you paid for. You didn't want to pay anything. And so, no, I'm not all that conscientious when it comes to doing this work for you. And it's interesting that we're having this conversation today because just this morning I received an email from a larger firm. Again, sometimes I do work for larger firms, asking me if I would take on this project and asked me what my fees were. And I told them exactly what they were. And they came back and wanting to cut them in half. And I told them, when your fees can line up, we have something to discuss. In the meantime, happy holidays. Because you're going to be back. And I am okay with welcoming you with open arms when you can write that check.
So I specialize in practice owners. That expands, attorneys, therapists, and all that stuff. And their heart breaks sometimes when they have to turn people away. How did you get past that heartbreak and that person needs this, but either they're not prioritizing it with their money or they genuinely can't afford it? Like, how did your thought process evolve?
It really depended on the person. Initially, I wanted to help everybody too. And two things happened. And it was always one thing or the other. Either I did the work, they were highly appreciative. They went off happily ever after, and whatever they agreed that they would do in exchange for me doing that, they didn't do it.
Yep.
Or they were the worst client under the sun because I agreed to do it for less than what I would charge someone else. And they took me through changes that you would just not believe. And those two experiences, every person in business has to have them because they help you to establish and erect boundaries that you have a story. Like, remember the Alamo? That's your Alamo. And you will hold firm after that. At this point, though, I make sure to price my my services in a way that is reasonable for me and reasonable for the person sitting in front of me. And I offer very generous payment plans, including Klarna and Afterpay, but I also have other payment plans. So I can work with a budget, but you actually do have to have a budget. One of the things that I find, and you probably do too, Randall, is a person is very serious when they have a dog in a fight.
Yep.
So you do have to pay something. Yeah.
It's so interesting how, those that pay the less sometimes are the most work. um,
Yes.
they don't follow up on time, all those different things. So
Yes.
today, how would you describe your ideal client? Like if who is the client that gives you great business margins, are a joy to work with? What is that archetype? Who is that person?
Yeah, that person is someone who has worked hard to establish everything they have. They were not handed anything. And so they know the value of a dollar. They know what it feels like to have someone not do a good job. And so when we're having a conversation, they're very clear about what they want and what they don't. My ideal client is also normally a little older. So they are in normally their 60s and they have built a business. They've retired normally, from a work situation, whether it's a company or they built a business and are now doing something else. And they are looking to the grandchildren. They have children, they love their kids, but they are now in full legacy succession planning phase. And it is a joy to work with them because when we're talking about insurance and the secured interest transfer form and the trust, there's no fighting. They're just asking questions for clarification so that they ensure that they understand and can communicate their understanding to their family members and what they're working on right now. We're not arguing over fees because many of them have already talked to other attorneys. And most of the time, the reason that they didn't go with them is because of personality fit. And there are many reasons why that happens, but you know, my personality comes through. The person knows that I care. Even if we decide we aren't going to work together, I have taken you seriously. I have listened to your concerns. I've given you the information that you need in order to execute and move on to the next. And I did so without an expectation of the meeting going in a certain way. I wanted it to. I've absolutely worked toward it, but I'm not going to be like caveman and bam you over the head about it.
So what you're telling me is you are not focusing on 30-year-olds.
I'm not certain. Oh,
Yeah,
well,
focusing on
no.
30-year-olds who are having a midlife crisis or something like that. That's not your target market.
It's not, but that's not to say that I would not work with somebody in their 30s. I actually just completed an estate plan for a young lady in her 30s, but she was the exceptional 30-year-old.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that people don't realize just because you niche down, yeah, majority of people are going to fall in that niche, but there will be people on the outside who are just ready.
Yes,
My
that's
case,
right.
ready for a financial plan. In your case, ready for an estate plan. Maybe they receive a lot of stock options. There are scenarios that people still come and see you. Where do you see your business in the future? Well, before we get there,
Yeah.
you've diversified your business. You do
Yeah.
estate planning, you speak, you do other things. Was that part of your desire to be an entrepreneur that you're not going to be limited on the things that you do? And why have you diversified?
Yeah, no, I wish that I could tell you that when I started out, I had this grand plan and this is how it all came together, and that's not how it was. And it all developed because I had a heart to serve. I started out with my firm, and then I got involved with Gavois. And one of the members of former president, who was a wonderful mentor to me, was involved with and invited me into the 100 Black Women. So I got involved there and I learned so much and really honed my skills. And I wrote my first book, Leading Through Living, a guide for women seeking growth through leadership. And what I talked about is how you can use the skills that you garner through nonprofit service in your corporate role, particularly when your organization refuses to assign you a mentor or take you seriously when it comes to promotion. Both things I actually went through. And so people read that book and invited me to speak. Reverend Rowena Seville Beck was actually one of the first people. She invited me to her church. And then people within that organization invited me or saw my pictures on social media. And so that's how I began speaking. And then from the speaking came the coaching, and then wanting to delve deeper and become more intimate came the retreats. And so many of my clients are clients across these services. And I absolutely love the fact that I can delve into all of these aspects of my personalities, my skills, gifts, and talents, and use them to help other people. And I know 2 days are the same, so life is never boring, and I love that part too.
Yeah, I see that journey as almost looking to super serve your target market or your
Yeah,
community.
I like that. Super serve.
Yeah,
Ren, I'm gonna use that, okay? And I will give you credit.
I'll take that too. So One thing I want to touch on, you mentioned you had a discussion with your husband to say, hey, I think I want to do this, go out on my own thing. Any advice to, let's be really specific, a wife approaching their husband saying, hey, I want to go out on my own. And also, while they're on that entrepreneurial journey, what check ins, what things need to happen to make sure things go as smooth as possible? It's going to be tough, but let's help some folks out.
Yeah, so and I also add this, my husband is a saint. You need to understand, I put respect on that man's name all the time because I resigned from my my job on Tuesday and we found out our daughter was on the way on Thursday. And he still said move forward. Real talk. And so the first thing is y'all have to be in partnership. So if you're early in your marriage, I would not necessarily tell you that it's the greatest idea to say, hey, I'm quitting my job and I'm just going to dive in there. I would say that you need about 5 years. You should already have your home or your living situation needs to be stable, the bills covered, and there should be something extra so y'all can go out to dinner or a movie without wondering if the lights are going to be on at the end of the month. The next thing is you still have to stay in constant communication about what's going on, not just in the business, but in your relationship. I tell people all the time, I've been married 26 years, and I tell people all the time that your marriage is its own entity. It is a person. It grows. It has hormones. It its voice drops after a while. It goes through all of the changes that we as human beings go through. And there's a successful aging and adulthood that occurs because we're having constant conversations, even when they're uncomfortable. And we can always do so with respect. You're not going to always like what your spouse has to say about how you're showing up in the world. I remember one time my husband said, babe, you just always look so tired. But no woman wanted to hear that. But I looked at myself and I was just like, gosh, he is right. So I started going to bed earlier. I changed my workout schedule so that I was working out at night instead of in the morning so I could get that extra sleep. I started getting facials on a regular basis so that I didn't look all bushed. And he was not fighting me about the extra expense of those things because that is something that is real. And, some people might think, well, that's really superficial. If you're in business for yourself, you need to understand that the way you show up, the way you look, it matters. If your clients see you looking dog tired all the time, they are concerned that you are going to try to do their work looking like that. You're going to make mistakes. That's what's in their mind. They don't realize that to do good work, sometimes we do have to burn the candle on both ends. But you shouldn't look like that because you shouldn't be burning the candle on both ends all the time. That is a once in a while kind of a situation, not an everyday. Which leads to the last thing I'll say about that. Um, you have to leave time for you individually and for y'all together. And so you're going to have to continue to date yourself and go out on dates. Go to that movie that you're not all that wild about seeing. Have date night where there's popcorn, the couch, and a blanket that y'all share. Ask him how his day is going, just like he's asking how your day is going. And don't sit there thinking about what you're going to do to respond when he's done talking. Just take it all in and you'll show him how he needs to do that for you as well. So those are some of the things that have helped us in my 20 years in practice doing all of this. So yeah.
I think one of the things that I like that you said was you have to nurture the business.
Mhm.
You have to also nurture the relationship. One thing I missed early on is I forgot to nurture myself. It's not that I wasn't, I was still trying to eat right, work out, all that stuff, but it was still, you have to have time alone with yourself to show up better for your business and for your partner, because
Yes.
that can wear you out after a while.
Yes. Absolutely, yes.
That's it. So where do you see your business? You're doing a lot of things. So in about 5, 10 years, is it, business as usual? Are you trying to evolve to something different? What are you trying to do?
So my plan at this point is to continue to scale. In 5 years, I plan to have my own building with at least five other attorneys working with me. And I would like to have larger retreats for my clients so that we can come together. One of the things that I do right now is I have quarterly, I call them mini retreats because they're on Zoom, where we talk about updates on things that are going on in the estate planning world, but also bring in someone to talk to them about things that maybe at the time they did their plan it did not apply, but it does now. For instance, the next quarter, I have someone coming in to talk about how to help your junior and seniors in high school get scholarships. Well, maybe your child, when we did this, or grandchild was really young, and now we're heading into high school. We need to be talking about these things because if you don't have to pull from the estate in order to fund that because they have these awesome scholarships that they won, maybe you can divert those funds into purchasing rental properties for them. So when they come out of school and go to grad school, they have that income coming in instead, or as well. That's what I should say, not instead, as well as what they're doing from 9 to 5.
I like that. I'm almost like a quarterly conference call, one to many, touch point.
That's right. That's right.
That's beautiful. And when you say pay for college, I have a couple young families I work with. I shiver at the cost of college nowadays. Because back in the day, your student loans used to cover everything. Now it's hard for a parent not to have to chip in some type of way.
And that's true. I mean, my daughter, she's on scholarship, and my husband and I still had to come out of pocket. It wasn't a big grip, but I could see how another parent would have struggled with that. And I just thank God every day for what we have been able to do and continue to do for our child.
All right. So for the last question, this is where I take my medicine. How can financial planners serve your client base better? What do you think is missing that we're not doing that we can improve upon?
Having conversations like this with the attorneys. I have had this conversation, kind of conversation with, let's see, only two other planners in my entire career. And there's just no reason for that, especially since I am bombarded on LinkedIn in my inbox, like weekly by some planner that's like, hey, let's go to lunch or can we get on Zoom? But it's never an in-depth, how do you serve? How this is how I do it. How can we work together for the good of the client? It's more like these are your services, these are my services. Let's be a referral base. And I'm just like, that's not really how it works. So that's the first thing, having these conversations so that we make sure that it's because it's not just about services being lined up, right? This is about methodology. This is about the way that we come into work, serving from our heart space, and also our backgrounds. Because if you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth, I don't know if we really are going to be able to really delve in like we need to with the needs of our clients. Because as I stated, most of my clients, they built what they have. It wasn't handed to them. And that is not a knock against those whose parents or grandparents were able to do that. I'm just being honest about where most of my clients are coming from. So
Because
that's yeah, so that's the major thing.
yeah, I think because they do have unique planning situations.
Hmm.
And silver spoon folks have unique planning situations because of that.
That's
Neither.
right.
So if somebody is listening to this and say, I should have had the estate plan done years ago. Or I have a business, I'm thriving, I'm winning. I forgot about operating agreement, having key people in place, and I need that type of guidance. How should they reach out to you?
So get on my calendar. Let's talk. I made it really, really simple. My website is getyourwillandtrustdonenow.com. And as soon as you book your time on my calendar, immediately you will receive an email linked to a form called the estate planning questionnaire. You will complete that. We will go over it during our session. You will be able to ask questions. I'll be able to share my thoughts on what you have shared. And then at the end, we can make a decision. Hopefully, that ends with us saying, yeah, we're moving forward together.
Awesome. Well, thank you for joining us today, Lynita Mitchell-Blackwell. She is not only a CPA, she's also an estate planner. Having those two together, that's a sweet spot because there's very few estate planners who fully know what it means to be an accountant. So I think that's a beautiful thing. Thank you very much
Thank you.
for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Randall. I appreciate you.
Feeling the pressure? You're not alone. I'm Randall Lavery with Deasil Wealth Management, and I specialize in simplifying wealth for those who are near retirement and business owners. We'll create a plan that fits your unique needs so you can actually enjoy the wealth that you built. We consider our firm results driven with a touch of fun. Ready for clarity? Click the Learn More and schedule your free discovery call. Let's build the financial future together.
Where the cash at, Uncle Money?